I need Don to get. I said this before, but I need to get Don to make us a theme song. It'd be really cool. Just like 30 seconds of.
You should have Gina do it.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Our Labs Open Office Hour. This week we're joined by William George. I feel like this might be our final solo William George Labs Open Office Hour.
Maybe. We'll see.
All right.
Probably at least won't be as frequent.
That's true. But which is actually kind of our bigger topic for this week, among other trifling things like hardware stuff coming in the future and blah blah blah. But that's not important. What's important is what you William. So let's give a little background and what's changing.
Yeah, well, so for folks that have watched this before or are familiar with the way our labs department works, historically we've kind of started out with just Matt and then eventually added myself and a couple other guys, or Don actually first, then myself and Kelly, and we'd kind of each specialized on different major applications or categories of applications that our customers were using. So Matt does primarily post-production and photography. Don does machine learning and high-performance computing. I did a whole bunch of stuff, engineering, photogrammetry, rendering, VR, a bunch of little assorted stuff. And then Kelly, when he came on, brought a lot of experience with like 3D modeling and game dev stuff. And what we've kind of ended up with, though, is everybody's siloed and kind of doing their own thing when it comes to putting together like our recommended systems. Mm-hmm. So we kind of have everybody's recommended systems look a little bit different, the information that's presented and everything like that. So I'm actually going to be transitioning away from the application-specific side of things that I've been doing for a few years and taking ownership over our recommended systems and our other configurations that are on our website so that we can kind of make them more uniform, hopefully bring them all into a similar appearance so that the customer experience is the same, whichever page they visit there. Nice. And also bridging, between departments internally here. So we have our labs guys, we've got our sales consultants, we've got our product qualification guys. So like we test things in labs, hardware focused, and then they test, or software focused, I should say, and then they test the hardware with a focus on things like how well does it fit in cases, how well can it be cooled, how reliable is it, how well does it work with the other things in our ecosystem. Yeah. And we didn't have a lot of cross communication going on between those different departments. So I'm going to kind of act as a nexus between labs and marketing and product qualification and consulting and possibly even production stuff, we'll see, and sort of help facilitate the sharing of information back and forth, making sure consultants know when hardware changes are coming and the labs knows what customers are saying they need, consulting, getting that information back and forth. And so I won't be doing, a bunch of articles focused on a lot of the same applications I've been doing. Some of it's going to go over to Kelly, like rendering, for example, fits really nicely with what he's been doing.
Yeah.
So he's going to take that over. Some stuff we just won't have as many articles on going forward, maybe just more periodically when there's something really important.
Sure.
I will still be doing some testing, but it will tend to come more from hardware focus rather than software. So like I want to do some stuff with NVLink on the 3090s and the A6000s that are coming out, and RAM speed testing, things that are sort of the next step back from the software layer. Cool. So there'll still be some of that coming. So I'll still probably show up on here with when there's big product stuff, but it'll be less of the focus on, hey, what are your questions about rendering and photogrammetry and engineering applications, and more of what cool new hardware is coming or how do these things interact with each other.
Yeah, I'm particularly interested in the RAM speed thing because I see a lot of back and forth, and even when I look up, like I punch in there like AMD RAM speed, like compatibilities, right? And it's suspicious. I don't know if I can. Sometimes I don't know. I think working here has made me very wary of manufacturers' recommendations because they don't always line up with how the real world works.
Yeah, there's certainly some of that. And with memory speeds, it's always been kind of funny to me. The motherboard manufacturers will recommend, or will officially support, or at least list in their official support, ridiculous things like crazy high memory speeds. But the CPU manufacturers are usually very, very conservative in that regard, very limited. So, we've found that the benefits of those additional memory speeds are usually not tremendous. There can be some benefit, especially in certain niche situations, but you're also talking about a lot less reliability in memory when you do that and stuff.
Sure.
So yeah, there might be some more of that coming. I did some testing on that, I think, late last year. But yeah, this move should free up some of my time to be able to look into things more like that, outside the scope of specific software focuses.
Yeah, that'll be neat. So just right off the bat, Welchie Music on YouTube was asking, where'd my mouse go? Wondering if this is a tech support hour or is this just discussion? I let them know that we'll do our best to answer any questions they might have. So we'll do our best. Because we're not in support. We don't have our hands on that side of things as much. But as a part of our continuing expansion of this live content, we will on occasion be having a member of our support team joining us on these Fridays. It's like going to be about a 6-week rotation. And they'll be highlighting like big things, common things that they've been having to take care of, and also make themselves available for questions of that sort. Why is my 3960 buzzing? Oh, you have one of our machines and it's buzzing.
I mean, guess off the bat is something's amiss with a fan somewhere. It could be as simple as something is bumping into a fan as it's rotating. That can cause a sound that sounds like a buzz if a cable's just along the edge of a fan. Or it can be a fan profile's gotten messed up and a fan is running at 100% instead of throttling, things of that nature. I would definitely, for specific stuff like that, reach out to our tech support guys. They're available via phone and email. And they will be able to much, much better help you because they can pull up your exact system specs, look at pictures from when we were building the system, all those sorts of things, and get you more precise help. I could take some guesses, but let's just
we're doing it live. It's going to be great.
Yeah,
I agree with William. My initial thought is a fan. A buzz tends to be like my own personal machine. One of my case fans spins incredibly fast, and it causes a cavitation between the grill of the case and the fan itself, and it just and I just don't care enough to fix it.
Is it out of curiosity? And again, I mean, our support guys would be able to do this directly with you a lot more effectively. Does it go away or is it steady? Like, does it come and go, or is it always on when the computer's on?
Oh yeah, Kelly mentions that it could be a coil whine from some of the series cards. Yeah,
a lot of
voltage sound. Yeah. Power supply gets that way sometimes too.
Anything with a lot of voltage going through it can end up having just electrical noise, which, and then the other tricky thing is everyone's hearing is so different. You know, some people are super sensitive to certain frequencies, other people not so much. I tend to have pretty good hearing, so I sometimes have been called in to like repair when they're encountering something like, can you double check and you hearing this? And it's
like
intermittent, but lasts
you can feel the CRT monitor voltage like in your teeth.
not quite, but I can. Never noticed it when I was a kid. Growing up, we all had CRT TVs, right, and computer monitors. But then, having gone away from that for a while, now in the last several years, if I walk into a room where someone does have a CRT going still, I can instantly hear. I'm like, why? Why is there a CRT here? Turn it off. It's annoying.
Awesome. I hope that helped a little bit, Welchie. But our support team will definitely be able to help narrow that down a little bit. So but appreciate the question. It's good to know. So awesome. All right. So where were we, William?
I was just kind of describing what I'm going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So it also means a lot more meetings, which I don't love, but it's actually really interesting to get some insight into parts of the company that I hadn't really knew existed, but didn't really participate in, even though I've been here for like 14 years or something ridiculous.
Wow.
But I'm in the purchasing weekly sync up meetings now to see like what parts are available and what's, boy, I don't envy their job these days. It is a mess out there with launches without supply and shipping delays at ports and tariffs and price changes, and holy cow.
Yeah.
They are the unsung heroes in this company.
It's nuts. I've heard from some other friends of mine who are in this industry as well, and it's like day to day or hour to hour changes. I was talking, and graphics cards in particular, talks to the distributor, and they're jacking prices up too. Like, we have one 3090 and we're going to charge you $1,400 for it or whatever. I'm not even sure what MSRP is anymore, but within hours, like, I just bought some, I'm going to want to try buy more. And so, yeah, it's still just such a mess, but that'll be fun. I was especially excited to when I had a little dabble into the product qualification, kind of peeking over Josh's shoulder there, and it's way more in depth than you think from the outside.
Yeah,
so that'll be really cool. All right. Hey. 62 Eddie, hello.
Saying hi.
Yeah.
Hi, Eddie.
Right on. So, Trim would be the market's all kind of crazy with prices these days. I know coming up, and this is cool because I always like being able to talk about like stuff that's semi-secret, right? The Threadripper Pro is coming soon in about a little. I think we can officially. Actually, see, and I always hesitate though.
I don't even know if we can say when we can sell it.
Okay,
we can talk about
soon.
it, but we can't sell it yet. But soon,
yeah,
in theory,
yeah, right, yeah, right. If they actually exist and can get here from across.
AMD is good at least about getting us samples of stuff on the CPU side. They've been pretty good about that. Intel does really well too. So that's been nice. So yeah, we've been playing around. We had some of them up here we were playing with. Now they're with Josh in qualification, but those are looking good. It's performance-wise, just from a CPU standpoint, I don't think it's going to be tremendously different from the normal Threadrippers. But what you get is a bunch more PCI Express lanes and a bunch more memory.
Awesome.
So it's an 8-channel memory instead of 4. So double the memory bandwidth. It supports like ECC registered memory and all that high-end stuff. It's basically a adaptation of their EPYC server processors for workstations.
Wow.
So it's kind of like it's their equivalent of Xeon from Intel's side, basically, in terms of where it is in their product line. Okay. And so it's going to be great for, like I said, systems that need a lot of memory or need a lot of memory bandwidth for what they're doing, as well as stuff that needs a lot of PCI Express devices, which, of course, mostly your brain probably goes to like multi-GPU setups, triple quad GPU should be really good. But potentially even things like a ton of NVMe drives or something.
Sure.
Because I don't even remember how many, but a lot of PCI Express 4 lanes.
Yeah. It sounds too like it'd be pretty good for like those heavier CPU compute tasks, right?
Sure. Yeah, sure. I don't know necessarily of any reason that it's particularly better than Threadripper, unless again, if what you're doing needs more memory bandwidth, yes, or more memory just in general. Yeah. But it's the same high end at the 64 cores at the top end, just like normal Threadripper. And I don't remember, but I would guess the clocks might not be quite as aggressive as normal Threadripper. I don't recall off the top of my head, but it should be in the same rough ballpark, CPU-wise. It's just you're going to pay more. and the motherboard's going to cost a bit more, but you're going to get more PCIe lanes, more memory bandwidth, and support for ECC registered memory. So
that'll be cool.
Yeah. And there's probably some more stuff that Don could tell you. There might be some under the hood things that I know he's been super excited about it. So
yeah, that'll be neat. It's always cool to see new product and stuff. That'll be interesting. I'm still kind of shook at how much of our product line changed over to AMD with this.
It has been a lot, and there's still more to do. There's certainly some systems where we've still working on testing to make sure that the AMD stuff is indeed as good or better than Intel, where we've been selling Intel in a certain area for years.
Mm-hmm.
And then also waiting on availability, like we talked about. It's been kind of a mess. But getting better. I know they go down to 16. I just saw Tim's comment there.
Mm-hmm.
There is definitely a 16 core. I don't know off the top of my head if there's a 12 or not. But I think the ones we're eyeing are the 16, 32, and 64.
It makes sense.
I think. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's neat. What are anything else coming from AMD? I know they did the 6900 XT for graphics cards and stuff.
They had their video cards, but yeah, so much of our stuff uses CUDA or RTX tech that there's a lot of our things where it didn't work, didn't make sense performance wise. And I think a lot of the Adobe programs are also more optimized for NVIDIA. No, the other big thing, not from AMD, but the A6000 video cards are starting to trickle. Like, we got 2, and we have 2 more coming, and we need that for testing to see if we can do 4 of them.
Right.
But I don't know how, when we're actually going to have enough that we can actively start selling them. But those are going to be exciting. Those, and I think I believe Kelly is going to be having some articles coming out about those soon.
Awesome.
So that should be cool, and look forward to see what he's found. But I expect performance just probably a hair slower than the top GeForce cards, so between the 3080 and the 3090 somewhere. But a ton of VRAM, and really crossing our fingers for being able to do quad. Quad 3090s just doesn't work with power requirements. At least, somebody could make it work if you had a dual power supplies or something like that. But in terms of what's practical in a system, it's too much for a 1600 watt power supply, and too much for probably a lot of people's electrical circuits. But those were what, 350 that they were rated for, I think.
Yeah, I think
and
so.
then they could spike higher. These are supposedly 300 watt.
Mm-hmm.
So 4 of them with a decent CPU and stuff should be doable. Cross your fingers.
Right on.
But we have to get 2 more in to test that. So.
So this is a good question from Cody Wellman on YouTube. Do you guys plan on selling Radeon Pro GPUs with your systems?
If it ends up making sense performance-wise, so far it doesn't seem like it does. Again, at least for the applications that we're targeting. Now, it's been a while since I've personally at least tested a Radeon Pro. I know that the last few we had in were just the normal Radeons. And we have some of the older Radeon Pros around. I don't know if there's, honestly, off the top of my head, I don't know if there's been new stuff in that area that we haven't gotten a hold of yet or not. But in general, it's just going to be a matter of whether the performance makes sense. And then if the performance does, then we also have to consider, availability. Can we actually get enough of them to sell? And reliability, although that one, of course, it's hard to project what the reliability of a new component's going to be. You can look at your past experience, but it isn't always necessarily going to be accurate. I know we have had more trouble in support with Radeon cards in the past, but that's been a while now because we haven't carried them for a long time. So
I think a big part of that is it just comes down to CUDA. CUDA is so well established in so many different applications, and unless somebody comes along to make open OpenCL, is that what it is, or GL? One of those.
OpenCL.
So they make it as easy to use as CUDA. NVIDIA puts so much effort into supporting the development environment for CUDA. That's really why it's got its fingers into everything. It's just easier to use. So
yeah, and I think that's probably gotten a lot better over time too, but so many programs out there are just established in using CUDA. Like all of the GPU rendering engines that we target, at least on Windows, still require CUDA and now support RTX, which is, even better in terms of performance there. 2 of the 3 photogrammetry applications we do use CUDA. I think one of the 3 one of the 3 you can do AMD, but at least it's not faster. Like we did a round of testing on those new Radeon cards, and it was fine now. Like actually they'd gotten to the point where it was comparable, but okay, it's the same. There's still not a need to then sell it, and that was one application. Right. So hopefully, AMD's been kicking butt on the CPU side. Maybe next gen they'll be there on graphics cards too. I don't know. We'll have to kind of see. But there's a lot of stuff that factors into it.
We have one from Twitch MPR 1999. Hi, Puget Sis. What is a good base Office PC to aim for? He works in Google AdWords, and the browser uses more and more and more RAM.
Yeah, honestly, these days, for just general use like that, most any CPU, at least, don't go like bare bones. I don't know if Intel's even doing like Celerons and nonsense anymore. Don't do that. But like any of the AMD Radeon 5000 series chips would be great. Any Intel like i7 processor should be fine. Even some of the i5s. What I would focus on is making sure you get a fast solid state drive and plenty of space for however much storage you need, and a fair amount of RAM, or a system where you can easily add in more, because you're right. Browsers, and especially if you run a lot of tabs at the same time, that eats up a lot of memory. And then anytime memory runs low, or just other stuff you're doing, applications and data and stuff all goes to the drive. So making sure your SSD is good and fast and reliable is great. So we don't do a whole lot in terms of focusing on just like standard Office workstations. Anything from our company would be more than sufficient.
Oh yeah. I rock one of our tiny Echoes right now, and that's Xeon based, and uses SODIMM memory, so that's a little weird. But I don't think and I do mostly browser based stuff. All my social media stuff is like in browser stuff, all of it, and it works. So that might be a good place to start, at least for inspiration. And you can tweak and adjust to your own heart's content.
Let's not talk about the computer I'm running off of here. It's ancient.
Oh, yeah. All right. So, man, I'm sorry I get thrown off. Yeah, I'm curious. Well, I'm just generally curious, I suppose. I'm so sorry. I lost
your choo-choo of thought.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm curious. Well, like, what does the future hold, I guess, for you and the labs department in general, I guess?
Oh, I think most labs is going to keep on trucking in what they've been doing. They do a great job of keeping up on the performance that you can get in a lot of these big applications that we test for with various hardware. I'm excited to see what Kelly does as he's taken over like the rendering stuff, and his testing with like Unreal has been really cool to see. So I think they're going to keep on trucking that way. I'm going to have a lot of work to do revisiting a lot of our pages. Like we haven't really had someone in particular focused responsibility of just maintaining like ad copy on stuff. Like I've been doing actually parts ad copy for years and years here. It just kind of tagged along with me from back when I was in consulting over to labs and everything. So the parts ad copy is usually fine. because also that doesn't tend to change. Like, you add a part, you write the copy for it, unless you discover you were wrong about something, you don't usually need to go back and change it.
Right.
But copy on like our configure pages for systems, description of like what a deluge is or what a serenity is or whatever. We tend to write that when we have a system, and then if somebody realizes like, oh, hey, wait, something on here is out of date, somebody will go back and fix it. But if nobody notices, we don't really have eyes on those things regularly. So that's one of the things that I'm going to get to go through and do. And I want to kind of set up a cadence, I think, and some reminders of like, I don't know, maybe every 3 or 6 months to go back and check through all of these pages on a rotation, because boy, there's some outdated stuff, like just in little random spots. It'll be like somewhere a paragraph about a system mentions a chipset, and it turns out, yeah, that's now 2 generations old. We just missed the fact that we wrote that there, and we just need to go back and change it from a Z270 to a Z490 or something.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, so there's lots of little things like that that I'm going to be tackling and needing to build plans for keeping up on. So that'll be fun. And I think we're actually like, we got a lot of stuff kind of that we're thinking through. I don't want to say too much because it's not all, you know, finalized or whatnot, but I think there'll be a lot of cool changes and improvements coming to the user experience on our website for folks coming in to configure systems or see information about the recommendations we make, that sort of stuff. So yeah.
So earlier on, you'd mentioned how some of your role will be doing some of the kind of hardware testing, like outside of the software packages, akin to like the memory speed article from before. Do you have a plan for what your first one's going to be? Anything you're really excited to really get your hands into?
Oh, I've got a whole list somewhere of stuff. I don't know for sure if all of this is going to end up becoming articles necessarily, but I want to do a little bit of testing on, like I said, NVLink for sure. And that certainly will probably not full articles, but like we've had blog posts before about like how to set up NVLink in Windows and which cards certain NVLink bridges work with. We need to update some of that for the new 3000 series. But also there were questions about like, performance differences on AMD chips with different chipsets. Like, are Ryzen chips slower on B550 than on X570? Is memory affected on that platform, whether you have 2 versus 4 sticks of memory? They'd both be dual channel, but the density of memory that increases when you have 2 sticks per channel instead of 1. There's some weird things like that. I've just seen some strange rumors online. So just dipping in, and like if it turns out like there's no difference or that it's like negligible, it's 1% or something, it probably won't bother becoming an article necessarily, but just so that we have that information. If we do discover something interesting, then we would. I know we've had people on comments on our current articles asking about PCIe 3 versus 4 for storage. We looked at that recently for video card performance, but for storage, so NVMe drives, they're of course rated for much higher speeds on PCI Express 4, but does that actually translate to anything real world? And outside of just copying a file, can you see those differences in application performance and whatnot? So that's something
I'd be particularly interested to know. We see often the like M.2 cards that stick into a PCI slot, or it's like a not necessarily like the RAID cards, but I've seen them where it's just one. And I'm curious if that would have an effect, PCI 3 or 4. Those sorts of things. I think those would be really interesting to see.
Yeah, there's definitely some interesting stuff out there to look into, and so I'll hopefully have more time to do that, since I won't be doing as much software-based testing, but we'll also have to see how much time it takes just managing all the configurations we've got. So
right. Yeah, that'll be cool. I like the idea of kind of building up the authority outside of just the software side of things, because there's some times where I've seen in the comments on articles and things where it can get a little touchy with some of the decisions that we make on hardware configurations that maybe don't necessarily line up with expectations from the general public.
Yeah.
And yeah, it'll be really cool to just have, because I think with the chipset one, I remember scrubbing through something from Gamers Nexus regarding the was it X570 versus B550, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't recall the results of that now, but it was more just, I think it was just kind of covering the differences and stuff. It didn't really get into like performance at all, if I recall correctly. But yeah, it'll be cool. Like the SX8100, because I can get 4 terabytes instead of. Oh, I missed some of the context to that comment. Actually, it's a question. Javier Gusart asks, would a PCIe 3 Gen 3 NVMe, particularly the XPG SX8100, make a huge difference instead of a Gen 4 980 Pro 2 terabyte to use for a scratch disk project file drive, editing 4K 10-bit 422 WAV files,
That is
ProRes from an R5.
Perfect example of one of those questions I was talking about that we sometimes get, that right now we don't have empirical answers for. I mean, I tend to think that a high-end PCIe, we're talking such ridiculous speeds, even on Gen 3 drives these days, gigabytes per second. I don't know that there's really going to be a difference there. I don't know that that's what the system is waiting on, but it might be. So we don't know right now. That is something that we might well be looking into in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
Some of that's going to be a little tricky when you get down to things like specifically like as a scratch disk. I'm going to have to work with Matt to see if like his benchmarks allow for like use of different. I assume his benchmark tests whatever. Like Premiere, for example, is set up to use. So if I go into Premiere and pick something as a scratch drive, that it'll actually incorporate that in the testing. But I'm going to find out if his tests are designed in such a way that it would uncover those sort of differences or not.
Oh, that's going to be so cool. We're gonna start breaking people's misconceptions here. This is going to be great.
Possibly. Or breaking our own.
Well, and that's good because at least from my point of view, conflict breeds engagement. So I would love to see some things where people are kind of mind blown for some of this stuff. It'll be really fun. Demon Mid says testing Gen 3 versus Gen 4 for storage and scratch drives. If there is a difference, testing Optane storage would be.
I thought I heard Intel was dropping Optane.
Sure.
Isn't that?
Yeah. And PCs are dead, right? Because tablets came out.
I don't know. Optane always sounded cool, but like from what I recall, never ended up really doing what it was claimed. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot of hands-on experience with it, but I'm under the impression that they were dropping a lot of that from their consumer drives.
Yeah.
Because it didn't. Intel just recently got a new SEO. SEO? What? Not SEO. SEO is search engine optimization.
Yeah.
What's the CEO? Wrong letter at the start there. New CEO that was like changing a bunch of stuff around and everything, trying to right the sinking ship or something.
Yeah. Oh, sinking ship. Yeah. Okay. But no, it'll be good. Yeah. That's actually a good
sinking compared to AMD's performance, at least.
It's the behemoth problem, right?
Yes.
Which
too big for their own good.
It is. I do think that is a good topic actually to bring up. That the new Intel CEO is an engineer, which is super cool. And I do think it's going to take a little bit. But I do think that they are going to head in a better direction because I always think about that. There's like a Steve Jobs interview from shortly after he came back or shortly after he was kicked out, where he said like once the sales and marketing people like take over the management positions of like the C-level stuff, it tends to stop focusing on product innovation and product quality even to an extent. And which, not to pick on Apple, but I kind of think they've hit that sort of thing again, in my opinion. I don't want to go down that path, but just as an aside. So yeah, I think it'll be exciting. We're going to see some really cool, I think it'll be just a tighter focus for Intel.
I'm hopeful for that too. I'm happy that AMD is doing great, but what we don't want is just AMD becomes the new behemoth and then they get complacent. We want competition.
Yeah.
We want options. It's always good. Competition drives performance and stuff for consumers, but it also just means there's more options so that when we do hit shortages and stuff, if one thing's not available, well, the next best thing still is, instead of just nothing being available.
Yeah. That'll be nice. NVIDIA's comments. Speaking of Intel, they are coming out with new graphics cards, which would be interesting. Yeah. I feel like it's going to be AMD 5-6 years ago sort of thing. It won't be that great, but it'll be just a cool another option. I think it'll be great. And again, I think they'll make some progress in that.
Yeah, I definitely think I think his comment there about it being low end to start is correct from my understanding. It's basically like a better version of their on board graphics that they've had for a long time to start. But then I think they're gonna, assuming they stick with it anyway, progress from there hopefully to some more advanced stuff. But and a third big player in the graphics card market that doesn't support CUDA, presumably, like if CUDA is still just NVIDIA, now having two competitors that are off that might encourage applications to expand and support things outside of CUDA more. Who knows? We'll have to kind of see. But again, competition is almost always good. So.
Yeah. And then that's an interesting thought too. Is Apple moving to ARM? Man, I think that's going to cause some weird waves here soon, because I've been seeing some interesting results, at least with, I think it was Resolve, their beta 17, incredible performance increases that way. Like, that's shocking.
Yeah, I saw some stuff too. I'm not an engineer that gets into like the layers of how this stuff works, but I was trying to figure out how it was possible that they were getting some of that performance with like relatively limited amounts of system RAM and things like that historically, at least from a Windows ecosystem, you kind of think, well, you have to have system memory to put stuff in. I don't know, maybe their ecosystem is different enough on ARM that it just changes the dynamics of how things work. I have no idea.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's interesting. Again, competition is good. Yeah.
Esbro Cali on YouTube asks, does Blender still require CUDA for GPU rendering?
I am not sure off the top of my head.
I know Blender's been one of those ones that is frequently asked that we include into our 3D rendering testing.
Yeah. Well, so
I feel like it's just under making it onto the list.
They came out with their own benchmark a while back, and I was super excited till I realized it was just a rendering benchmark. It didn't actually factor in any of the like viewport stuff, which we didn't end up adding it to our suite for that reason. We already had 3 GPU rendering and 2 CPU rendering tests, and It was just going to tell us more of the same. Kelly would probably be able to give you a better answer there, although yes and no is kind of confusing.
He says there's different options.
CUDA test. Okay, I was going to say, yeah, on their website, at least they do say GPU rendering with NVIDIA CUDA and AMD OpenCL. So it looks like, yeah, they probably do support AMD, but again, that's a case where NVIDIA has a lead there in terms of how long they've been working on that stuff. So yeah, again, Kelly for rendering stuff, Kelly's going to be the go-to guy now. And
let's see. Demon Mint mentions there are some pretty significant driver optimizations going into the RX 6800 XT lately. How often do you guys update testing data to account for that?
So we usually, at least my experience personally doing this stuff, was if a new driver that substantially changed performance came out that we were aware of, we'd go back and test even cards we'd previously tested, like a new round of updates. But then if like a new product came out but the drivers didn't really change much, or it was still on the same driver, we would usually reuse the results from the previous round and just add the new test result to it. So if we had reason to think that things were substantially different, we would redo our testing. So that's why you'll see sometimes in our articles, like the performance of a card on a certain software test might be different 6 months down the road, but then you see another article 1 month later and it'll be the exact same result because we just reused the same one and nothing had changed. So we try to keep up on that when we can. We also aren't always necessarily on the very latest things, especially with graphics drivers, because sometimes a new graphics driver will come out that doesn't work right with stuff. So we, if a new driver comes out, we tend to lag a little bit behind unless it's needed for supporting a new product.
Because that exact situation just happened recently with like every content creation software. The NVIDIA driver broke it. You had to roll back. I'm sure by now they've fixed it, but that was really significant. Like when we put that out and it started getting talked about, people were like, "Oh my goodness!" Like that changed everything back to normal. Like that was crazy.
And that's for NVIDIA. We also use we try to use internally and for most of our production systems the Studio driver, which tends to lag a little bit behind their Game Ready driver. And I believe that was the case there, is the Game Ready one had the problem. The existing Studio driver at the time was a generation older, didn't have the problem, and that was the easy solution, was just install the Studio driver instead. Which,
honestly, just from a personal standpoint, I would recommend everybody using the Studio drivers, whether you're a gamer or not. Because really what's the difference of a few frames per second when we're talking about stability? Like,
yeah, and I don't know that there's even necessarily a frame per second difference, at least when they are the same driver release. Like I said, the Studio ones tend to lag a little further behind and get additional testing. Personally, my role with graphics drivers on my home systems is I don't upgrade it unless I have to. Like if it's working and I know it's working, leave it.
Sure.
I do the same thing with Windows updates. I think I've currently managed to convince Windows to stay about 3 years old. Like I'm way back on version, especially here at the office. What version am I on actually? It's kind of funny.
On Windows 7.
No, I'm on Windows 10, but like I'm on, I don't know off the top of my head how to interpret this, but I'm on build 10.240 here at the office. And I think that is several years out of date now. Because I don't like updates.
Yeah. Which
when
again,
is this one from?
It's just pretty good because
This is from July 29th, 2015.
Man.
There are tricks. There are tricks to convincing Windows 10 to stay old.
Oh yeah.
It's hard.
You set your network connection to metered and it solves all your problems.
That's the primary one. The other trick, because I didn't know about the metered one until recently, the other trick is just not have enough storage space on your C drive for Windows to put the update.
That's great. William just keeps like a bunch of giant videos, Blu-rays just ripped to his C drive to fill up space.
Now the trick here at work is just have a tiny C drive.
Oh yeah,
it's only 61 gigabyte capacity.
Wow, that's super tiny.
I think it's an 80 gig SSD or 120 or something, and I've got it partitioned.
Wow.
Yeah, it's that. I like this little system. I've been running this little guy as my system since way back, like midway through consulting. So years and years and years. Yeah,
it's cute. But I mean, to kind of press on that a bit, it is kind of important to delay Windows updates a little bit for your production machine. Like if you're in the middle of doing a project and stuff, you want to push that off until you have a moment in between, because as you will see in our support articles often enough, they're, especially with their major updates, the big like seasonal updates tend to break things. And we have like audio problems, network issues with I think it was like the October update, the 2004 one, I think, all kind of weird stuff. Yep. So definitely defer your updates for a little bit if your machine is like for work stuff that is important. I think that's smart.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see here. Let's see.
The other fun comments.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, Kelly asks, is that's a big reason to go with Windows Pro versus Home, right? Delaying Home is more difficult.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with the home version recently, but Pro definitely gives you more built-in controls over, how I think you can delay the major versions up to a year, and you have options to delay the smaller updates a certain amount of time that you don't in the home version. I don't know if the home version lets you use that trick about metered connection. Like that's not a feature that is intended, I don't think. So
Yeah.
I hope no Microsoft devs are watching and goof this up for me. But that I assume would probably be something the home version would support, but I don't know. But that's just basically like if you are legitimately on a metered connection, Microsoft doesn't want to make you pay, hundreds of dollars potentially for gigabytes and gigabytes of updates that
Yeah.
you didn't need. And you can't normally very easily set a connection as metered that's not, but there are ways to do it. And then, like I said, the other trick of just keeping small enough space on your C drive, that one I don't think they can get around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless they go in and delete your stuff and then make room, which, never know.
Right. That would be terrible. Like suddenly you have a U2 album on your computer. Sorry.
There's precedent.
Yeah, I just pick on Apple a little bit. I'm on Enterprise for my work machine, so I have no idea. I just update when it tells me to. Yeah. Right on. I'm curious. I don't know, man. I feel a little like unprepared, or we burned through a lot of our topic already.
We talked too fast.
Yeah.
No.
And today was a bit of a wild card day, so I think we'll be all right.
Sure.
Just as long as Eric isn't watching right now. Just kidding.
Well, there's plenty of other cool stuff coming. Let's see, what else can we say?
Actually, Javier has another question, just to kind of fall back again into the NVMe drives. Would you usually want your fastest drive to be the project file scratch disk drive?
For Premiere Pro specifically, I would defer to Matt. He's our Adobe expert here, and he's got some articles about, let's see if I can find Premiere Pro storage.
I know that there we have an article for storage optimization and stuff, but it's like 2 years
old. It's a bit old. That's true. Yeah.
It still mentions splatter drives in that article.
I mean, there's still a place for them in the trash heap. I mean, no, I say I have a few at home.
Yeah, on a shelf, right?
No, my home theater PC. It's hard to get like many terabytes worth of SSD for cheap.
That's true.
So
getting there.
Backup and mass storage, they still are good. But gosh, I know he's talked about it a little bit in some more recent articles, or maybe in the comments sections, as to what his kind of modern recommendation is. Oh, actually, the easiest way might be to go look and see what he puts on his recommended systems while they are still technically things that he has put together and not me.
There you go.
Premiere Pro, top end. So he breaks them out into OS and software, project files, scratch and media cache, an optional dedicated scratch and media cache, and then optional storage and archiving.
Actually, I just recently condensed the top 3 After Effects. And let's see. So the under the best configuration for After Effects, at least, the project drive is a 2 terabyte 860 Evo. So that's your classic 2.5-inch SSD. The disk cache is a 1 terabyte Seagate Fire CUDA 520 NVMe, which is faster than the 980 Evo or 980 Pro NVMe. So project files, you're probably still fine with a regular SATA SSD, but your cache, which might also kind of be scratch, you'll definitely want as the faster of the two.
Yeah.
Could I get a link to this? Sure.
And we should have a page somewhere with just like all of our best PC4 articles. I think Matt's got a Premiere Pro one coming soon,
Yes.
from what I remember. So maybe just keep on the lookout for that, a new best PC for Premiere Pro article, because he will go into things like that. That's probably the best place to see him talk about some of that stuff.
Yeah. I imagine it'll be very similar, After Effects and Premiere Pro.
Yeah, I would defer to Matt on all that stuff. I don't deal with Adobe software stuff myself. When I do editing, I do it in Resolve because it's free. I used to use a Premiere Elements. I bought a copy of that, but then Resolve being free is even better. So
yeah. having kind of I skim almost. I have to gist all the articles a lot of the time, and so I start getting a feel for the crossover of things. I think they're going to be very similar. The best PC for After Effects / Premiere Pro. I think the biggest difference for Premiere Pro is the graphics card will be more robust. Premiere takes more advantage of that with like encoding and decoding and that sort of a thing, and the visual effects part of things. Shockingly, After Effects, being the visual effects program, isn't using the graphics card as much as you'd think. Basically across the board, it's a 3070, which blows my mind. You'd think it would be more GPU accelerated, but it is not. So, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, let's see. I'm really good. So actually, to come back to we mentioned the A6000, which is not a Quadro anymore. That's the first in a line of the new Quadros, right?
Presumably, well, you just called them Quadros. Presumably, I guess new line of professional graphics cards from NVIDIA. Sure. I don't know how they're going to refer to them, honestly. Like, I used to call them GeForce, you call them Quadro, you refer to the whole families. It's like Core and Core X or Threadripper and Ryzen or whatever. Like, I don't know entirely what NVIDIA is going to do when they just want to refer to all of their non-gaming cards, or at least that's the thing. It's not even just non-gaming, because they got Tesla for like server stuff. So it's really the workstation-oriented video cards now don't have a name, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it's very strange.
It is, but yeah, presumably that's the first of many. That's the only one so far as I know that they've announced. But generally, from the past, they usually start near the upper end and work their way down. So it's the A6000. You know, I mean, we've got currently what we have RTX on the Quadro line, the current one, Quadro RTX 8000, 6000, 5000, 4000 in desktops, and then I think there's a 3000 for mobile, but not a desktop equivalent as far as I know. Okay. So I would expect a similar lineup eventually of RTX A series cards, and I don't know. It is kind of weird that like that RTX series, the last gen of Quadros, never made its way all the way down to the lower end. But then if you think about it, the GeForce cards didn't really either, did they? They still have GTX, like 1650, 1660, stuff like that. They didn't go any lower than the 2060 and 3060 Ti so far. Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a bit strange. But
yeah, I think this is a bit of a joke, but Demon Mitt asks, is there any possible chance we'll ever see a dual GPU NVIDIA card again?
2 GPUs on one card? I don't think so. The problem is power. Like one high-end NVIDIA card is now well beyond the official PCI Express spec, which is supposed to be 300 watts max per card, and they're at what 350 is the rating, and it'll go higher for brief periods under turbo. So you could put two really mid-range GPUs on one card, but like, why? There's no reason it wouldn't be as good as a single high-end GPU. So no, but we do still like to stack them. Games don't need it anymore, but there's lots of professional applications where they will eat as much GPU as you can throw at it. GPU rendering in particular, Resolve tends to do really well with that. You have to have the paid version of Resolve, not the free version, to use more than one GPU. A lot of the stuff Dawn does with machine learning and AI inference and stuff will eat GPUs for breakfast. So, like I said, that's one of the reasons I'm excited about getting 4 of the A6000 in, is to see if we can actually do 4 of them, because that should be better performance than 3 3090s, which is where we can cap out now, and double the RAM per card of the 3090. They're 48 gig cards instead of 24, and they're blowers, so cooling should be okay. So I'm super excited about kind of maxing out what we can offer there for a multi-GPU system.
Yeah. Do we have any maybe vague timeline?
Well, I know we're supposed to be getting a couple more of those sometime this month. We have 2 now, so we can start qualification. Like I said, I think Kelly's got some articles coming out very soon with looking at just like, I don't know if he's doing performance of 2 or just individual card performance, but just looking at those in the abstract. And then once we have 4, we can do that. And then the big question though is beyond that, like, I don't know how these cards are for widespread availability. Like, great, we get 4 of them, we can officially qualify everything, but if that's the only 4 we're going to get for months, we can't actually sell them really. Or can't sell more than one system. So
we said 1 at a time right now.
Okay, yeah, and that makes sense. Until we have 4 of them, it'd be kind of silly to look at like 1 and 2 card performance now and then do another one looking at 3 and 4 card performance or something. So that makes sense. I see where you were going with that, Demon. That does make sense. So, it was a while ago. What was that card that was, man? It's been a long time since they had a dual GPU card. There was one Titan Z, wasn't it? That was a dual GPU one. Am I remembering right? And then there was and it's been a long time. Yeah, the 690. That's right. And the Titan Z. Yep.
Yeah.
Whew. That was a long time.
Yeah. Huh. That's we're almost getting to a point where you're having like a second computer is just for graphics.
Yeah, that's what the video card's been for a while now in terms of horsepower.
Like, and now we're getting to power requirements where
true.
I got a 450 SFX that won't power a modern graphics card, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's getting pretty crazy. Sam Figueroa asked about any thoughts, and I can handle this one because I was just dabbling into this. Any thoughts on the upcoming AMD Threadripper for Premiere Pro performance? Again, Matt is the expert here, but I think I can take a good guess, again, from having gisted a lot of these articles. The Threadrippers tend to be slower than the equivalent Ryzen chips. However, you do get benefit from the expanded memory capability, which can have a good effect across like your total workflow. So where your Premiere Pro performance might go a little slower, you will probably see improvements across the full pipeline. I think I used the right words there.
Yeah.
Because what tends to be the deal is the software will hold the rendered frames in memory. So if you have extra memory, it won't have to re-render those frames.
Yeah, and I think that might be more specific to After Effects.
That could be
than Premiere, because After Effects is the one where it's doing that sort of calculation by frame of all the crazy whatever stuff you're doing in VFX on the frame. I don't know that holds true for Premiere, but yeah, Matt should, like I said, should have I think a Premiere Pro updated article soon. So all sorts of good info will be coming.
Yeah. GPU will be main component. CPU will be add-on. Yeah, I imagine so. Well, we're right on that. We're just coming up to our hour. Is there anything? Oh, kind of off the wall question. Have you all ever thought or seen any big changes in PC motherboard design or layout? I'm asking because I recently saw an Intel motherboard that had a typical ATX layout, but the CPU socket was on the back of the motherboard. I saw pictures of that with the I/O and PCI slots on the normal front side.
Why would you do that?
I think it's to compartmentalize the CPU away from the graphics card and stuff for heating. You can
That would force you to have a substantially wider chassis, though.
Oh, quite so, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. Honestly, I mean, I remember when BTX was supposed to be all the rage that was coming, and it was going to change everything, and it didn't. I think a lot of like Dell and HP pre-built systems where they control everything have either gone to BTX or other weird like proprietary layouts and stuff. But they do other crazy things with proprietary power supplies and stuff. For the consumer stuff, I don't foresee any major changes. I mean, it's pretty well optimized already. Like you've got stuff in a logical layout. The memory chips have to be close to the CPU because you need to keep the data pathways to them short in order for them to be low latency. The PCI Express slots are lined up in such a way that you can easily access them, and fans blow out the back of the system. Like it's a pretty decent layout. I don't know that there's a whole lot that makes sense to change there. And especially if you start changing sizes and locations of mounting holes, you're working with whole different ecosystems of cases and motherboards, and it's nice to keep things compatible. So I don't foresee a whole lot of change going on there.
Yeah.
And I mean, the cooling's not bad. Yes, there's some weird stuff that can go on with cooling, but it's really, if you put decent quality fans in and you have a decent quality case, it's not bad. You can do a lot of good stuff with cooling even now, and without having to resort to liquid cooling and stuff like that. So
Yep. Right on. That does bring us a little over our hour. That was pretty good. William, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day for joining us.
You are very welcome.
It's pretty cool. And I look forward to seeing some of these more hardware focused articles, because those sort of things are really fun. And I like that it's applicable outside of more than just what we are, more than what we tend to be focused on, like the software optimization side of things. I think we'll be able to help a lot more people this way. It'll be really cool, really fun, really cool. So
awesome. Well, thanks for having me, and it's always good talking to you.
Thanks. And thank you to the audience as well for joining us today on our Labs Open Office Hour. We do this every Wednesday and Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific. Wednesdays, we bring in outside experts to talk about their workflow and their perspective on the industry that they are experts in. And on Fridays, we'll have our internal experts like William here to kind of do the same thing, but a little more focused on the crossover of the software and hardware. So thank you guys for joining us today. Mark your calendars, Wednesdays, Fridays, 1 p.m. Pacific, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.